Welcome back, everyone, to another day, another week here at the Damage Report. Not just any day, though, a fantastic Monday. Although, let's keep it real. I don't think it's gonna be that fantastic. Even we have Francesca. I mean, we have that. Hey, Francesca, how's it going, Francesca Fiorentini? Like, are you gonna go on record and say that this is getting off to a fantastic beginning of the week?
There's nothing wrong in the world today, okay? You thought there was, but I'm here to tell you there's not. Don't even look at your phone. Don't even look at it. Just stay on this show. Everything's fine. As we sip our coffee in flames.
Yes. Yeah. Well, last week, look, near the end of last week, there wasn't a lot going on. And I foolishly wished that there would be more news. And it's not going well, though. But we do want to thank you for being here, for facing the news as we have day after day throughout the first season of the Damage Report. Anyway, we're glad to have you here. We will be talking in just a short while about the devastating situation in Afghanistan. And it's gonna be rough. Let's keep it real. It just is. We're gonna try to lighten things a little bit later on by talking about some of the worst takes on it. And I've tried to be choosy because there are so many that are absolute garbage. But the rough news continues afterward. Haiti's in the aftermath of a devastating earthquake. AOC has responded to the incredibly misogynistic, hateful comments of Tucker Carlson. And then you get into kids in hospital for COVID. So yeah, it's gonna be a rough one. But thank you for being here. Hope that you hit the like button and share the stream so that others can suffer with us. And as we go through all of this, if you would want to send us any messages, comments, tweets, anything like that, super chats, we'll be responding as we go. Oh, early heads up. This will lighten up things a little bit. So with everything that's going on in Afghanistan, obviously I've been thinking back to, it's been 20 years. And so we had a suggestion for a top 10 list, which we do every Monday, Francesca and myself. And we're gonna be talking about school, what we missed from way back in the before times, not just before the pandemic, but before all of this. So that'll be going up for our tier 2 and tier 3 members on YouTube later on if you'd like to become one. But with that said, Francesca, how'd you like to talk about the news?
Sure. I mean, is that what you do on this show?
Sometimes.
Oh, cool. So I've never been here, but anyway.
Sometimes we just talk about Quentin Tarantino's family problems. Sometimes we never,
oh God, for nonsense, please. I feel like the news out of Afghanistan is less upsetting somehow than that.
Yeah,
but anyway.
Quote from him. Anyway, okay, I've stalled as long as I can. Let's do this. The situation in Afghanistan is devastating, as I am sure you are quite aware. And with every passing hour, it seems to be getting worse. Most recently, right as we're going live, we found out about more violence near the airport in Kabul. Originally, 2 men had been shot, now more have been, but let's catch up a little bit. So the morning after the Taliban installed themselves in the presidential palace in Kabul, Afghan officials in other cities were filmed handing over power to insurgent leaders. President Ashraf Ghani fled the country as the insurgents entered the city just yesterday. The former president, Hamid Karzai, said he had formed a council with other political leaders to coordinate a peaceful transition to a new Taliban government. And the head of the Presidential Protective Service, which has guarded it for most of the last 2 decades, shook hands with the Taliban commander and announced the handover. And so, of course, look, there's been a lot of horrible, now instantly iconic imagery. Leaders of the Taliban at the presidential desk being one. We will talk about others. Kabul's international airport is under the protection of foreign forces. That deployment is increasing. Thousands of US soldiers have been sent to the country to assist it in what is described as a hasty evacuation, which those words are doing a lot of work there. Thousands of Afghanis flooded the tarmac on Monday morning, at one point swarming a departing US military plane. And there is horrible imagery, videos of people falling from the plane to their deaths as it took off. So yeah, it is worse, I guess, than most of those involved in the military presence of the US had expected it to be, at least instantly. But by any measure, it is horrible what is happening there right now. Francesca, let's get into it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that as obviously you can't look at these images and not immediately feel for the Afghan people who've lived under Taliban rule before, lived under that, sort of iron fist before, were promised a pack of lies and got nothing but occupation and a country that was ravaged and used as a breeding ground for weapons contractors and others to make a killing, right? Literally, figuratively, whatever. You've got a rise of opium production, a drug trade that was not existent in terms of, at least not as robust before the Americans came. And now you've got a country that is back in the hands of the Taliban. So just on understanding how devastating that must be, and to the point where people are clinging to aircraft carriers, to airplanes to try and get out of Kabul. Number one, my immediate reaction is the US must make right by the people that helped its occupation, who live in Afghanistan, translators, assistants, helpers, whomever, like parts of the Afghan government itself, right? And this is not just on the United States, it's on NATO, right? We're talking about many, many countries that need to open their borders to Afghan refugees and asylum seekers, of which there are hundreds of thousands. That needs to happen. It might not happen right now immediately, but it needs to happen in short order.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a little bit of information about some of what some countries are doing in preparation for getting people out of the country. In terms of the fears about what the Taliban will do, they are putting on a bit of like a PR offensive to reassure the people of the country they are reconquering and now have basically complete control over, that they shouldn't worry. They've issued statements aimed at reassuring Afghans. They say there will be no revenge attacks on those who worked for the government or its security services, and that life, property, and honor will be respected. They're urging Afghans to remain in the country and have pledged to create a secure environment for businesses, embassies, and foreign and local charities. That is what they are saying. Last month, though, after capturing the Malistan district of the southern Ghazni province, Taliban fighters went door to door looking for people who had worked with the government, killing at least 27 civilians, wounding 10 others, and looting homes. And now that's like sort of the directly going for people who were a part of the regime. They say they're not going to do that, sure. In terms of the broader effect that they're going to have, they've given no strong indication that this will be anything other than the way the Taliban ruled in the period they did, the half decade they did before 2001. And I think people are expecting that. In the center of Kabul, people began painting over advertisements and posters of women at beauty salons, already fearing the return of the Taliban's traditional bans against images of humans and against women appearing in public unveiled. Word on the streets of Kabul today say there are far fewer women actually in public. Those that are there are dressed far more conservatively. Men who have been interviewed have changed out of their more Western modern wear for outfits that are considered more acceptable by the Taliban. So I understand every single, well, I mean, I don't fully understand every one of those fears. I haven't lived through it, I've had that privilege, but I try to understand those fears. I can't imagine what, like you mentioned, Francesca, that there are people there that of course remember how horrific it was under the Taliban. There are others that don't. They've lived their whole life in this period. Obviously, the Taliban has existed. There has been endless violence and terror attacks. There's been all of that, but they haven't been under the direct control for the most part. So they must feel like a different kind of terror about what it could mean because they don't have that experience that they can draw upon.
There's a couple things there's a lot of things to say about how and why the US backed Afghan military and government crumbled so quickly. I think it was very surprising to a lot of people, and yet unsurprising if you've been paying attention to how poorly the war in Afghanistan is going and has been going. How much disinformation, how much lack of information, how much faulty intelligence, that generals didn't know what they were doing, and that ultimately after 20 years, the United States was unable to build a government that instilled any amount of support from the people. And yes, it is hard to imagine that the Taliban might enjoy in some instances broader support, but you have to remember the Taliban have one thing going for them, albeit their brutal tactics aside, they're from Afghanistan. So that does count for something, whereas the United States, not from Afghanistan, after 20 years of funneling endless amounts of money, a lot of it embezzled and in corrupt ways disappeared, still they were unable to mount a moral political force that actually had political traction and legitimacy, right? And so I want to remember that. The second thing I want to say is that I'm sure that things will get worse under the Taliban, but it is interesting and notable that very few people have died up until this point. That say what you will, Biden should have stayed longer, Biden should have had a different withdrawal plan. There are not, I mean, other than people who are like clinging to planes, right? The Taliban have not engaged in firefights with US military personnel, right? With the Afghan military. Like people have not died en masse. Like that's not what's happening right now. So I'm sure
it's possible that, I mean, tactically shooting at the US troops as they leave seems like one of the best ways to get, neocons and, libs who are supportive of endless military wars to come back in.
Sure.
So it is possible that it could change,
It could absolutely change. It could change. I'm just saying I'm not giving any kind of moral judgment of that. I'm just astounded that actually this has been fairly bloodless. That's not to say it won't get worse. The other thing to note is that the Taliban, as gross as it might appear, they are trying to kind of be a real political force. They've got like, an embassy in like Doha, Qatar. They started peace talks with Trump. They say, this was another statement they made before they assumed power most recently, that there will be a role for women in government as there was under the US backed Afghan regime. Who knows? Is this the new Taliban? And I think ultimately, what is the United States' role? And is it to play global cop, global police? Are we supposed to go around installing, governments and toppling dictators wherever we see fit just cause we're into nation building? Oh no, wait, this is for 9/11. Oh no, wait, it was unclear from the beginning.
Yeah, well, look, I think those are sort of separate things. Obviously, I'm not supportive of an endless military deployment there. Been consistent on that from way back in the run up to the war. I remember that, and I'm sure you'll be talking about your experience there too. That said, I have as little information about the past, let alone the present or future course of the Taliban, as virtually anyone does. That said, that hasn't stopped anyone else from opining on it over the past 24 hours or so. I don't expect massive change. We'll see. We'll see. I have very little expectations there. But who knows? I would love to be surprised there. I've been surprised often in the past year or two in politics, almost always in a negative direction. Yeah.
The real question, John, isn't like whether or not they're going to be good, they're going to be bad. It is how can the United States make whole the people that it has left behind and the people.
Sure, we're going to turn to that in a minute.
So.
Yes, we're gonna turn to that in a minute. I just want to point out, and you mentioned this too. So in terms of like money that's been spent, they say $83 billion has been spent directly on creating the security force. Who knows if that's the total amount? And obviously, as you pointed out, there was a massive amount of corruption where the money got sent there, and then God only knows what happened with it. Seems fair though. I mean, here our defense contractors were making huge amounts of money off of it, so why shouldn't they? I guess. Estimates of how much the war itself have cost over the past couple of decades vary broadly. But a number I've seen come up very often is at least $2 trillion specifically in Afghanistan. $2 trillion. By the way, that $83 billion for the security force, they say it would cost $25 billion to vaccinate the world. So to put it in perspective, yeah, devastating. 2,400 American soldiers died. Or service members died in Afghanistan, thousands more were wounded, and at least tens of thousands of civilians have died. That seems like a massive undercount there, and God only knows. But the cost in dollars and in lives has been absolutely devastating. Hopefully it will continue, as you are pointing out, as somewhat bloodless right now, but that remains to be seen. You want to turn to getting people out of there? Okay, let's do it. So the task now seems to be Biden talking about sending soldiers temporarily to Afghanistan. We will see what temporarily turns out to be in this context. Others are saying we now need to do a far better job than clearly has been done over the past day or so of getting people out of there, both those who are actually at the airport trying to leave and those who are potentially going to be targeted for either their service to the Afghan government, to the US soldiers there, or people who are in a variety of classes that simply might be targeted. Female academics, people involved in NGOs, a number of different groups like that. And so the US government has said in the coming days it would evacuate thousands of American citizens, embassy employees and their families, and quote, particularly vulnerable Afghan nationals. So does that mean translators? Is it broader than that? If so, how much broader? We don't necessarily know. But 5 Mediterranean countries on the forefront of past mass migration to Europe, Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Malta, and Spain, have requested European Union level talks on Wednesday about how to respond. There are also concerns about refugees flowing to Iran, Pakistan, and Turkey. And Canada said last week that it would resettle more than 20,000 Afghan citizens from groups it considers likely targets of the Taliban, including leading women rights workers and LGBTQ people. So I am assuming we're gonna see a lot more out of that. And I should also let you know that in about 2 hours or so, Biden is supposed to be speaking. We will see what direction he goes, or both, sending soldiers back in or getting people out of Afghanistan. So far, from what you're seeing, Francesca, how satisfied are you with the resettlement effort?
I mean, it is a start. It's good that talks may be starting to happen. I think it needs to continue to happen. And I think that President Biden should take leadership on this and should, use it as a point to turn around some of his kind of honestly disappointing immigration policies and say that, especially when it comes to Afghanistan, we have a moral responsibility to allow refugees to resettle and asylum seekers to live in the United States. And there's other things obviously the United States can do to make sure that Afghanistan, in terms of if the Taliban can be circumvented, to support on the ground organizations. I support that. I definitely support people doing that. I don't always trust where the United States government puts its funds, clearly. But I think, people to people and that kind of stuff. Look, we live in a globalized, digitized world. We can do those kinds of things. I don't know if I think we're gonna talk about the political stuff later. I am very curious as to what Joe Biden is gonna say, and I do have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah, I can only imagine who has been advising him and who has been trying to advise him. I mean, we've seen like some of the rogues gallery of people who got us into Afghanistan, many of them still working in media. They've learned a lot, I would guess. They don't seem to have. Still writing about it, op-eds. What does David Frum think, Francesca, about the war in Afghanistan? So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Is he gonna send 10,000 soldiers that are gonna be there for the next 5 years? Is it gonna become 20,000? I don't know. Like, they seem dead set on getting out, but Biden has responded negatively to crises like, more people coming across the southern border in ways that hardly seemed consistent with what he had said he was going to do. But also, like, we're talking about, our fears of how these different groups could potentially be affected. I mean, the Taliban is a group that had a very liberal idea of how often capital punishment should be used and how brutally it should be used. And now all of these people could potentially be at risk. But I also see some people expressing sort of similar opinions, and I fear that it is a cover for wanting to, continue the endless occupation in the same way that those sorts of concerns were trotted out about Iraq, before the war in Iraq as well. So I like to see more empathy on display in American political discourse, but sometimes I worry when foreign policy is the battleground. Empathy often seems like just another tool for them to use to give the defense contractors and the warmongers what they want. So
No, it is. That is exactly what it was. 20 years ago, it wasn't just 9/11. It moved to, well, we must have empathy for the Afghan women and the children and the people, and we need to free a nation. And it was like, okay, I guess we're doing that now. All right, what about the terrorists? Is like, no, okay, so that is what the war in Afghanistan quickly became. That's what the occupation became. And so Americans have had our empathy weaponized and propagandized against us in order to continue the occupation of Afghanistan, to promise that a new nation is, it's on the horizon. It is coming, it is gonna get here, and man, it's gonna be good. And okay, we were promised that once we leave, that new nation would be able to stand on its own 2 feet. Well, guess what? It took weeks. It took a day for Kabul to fall. So what were we actually doing in Afghanistan? We were lining the pockets of weapons contractors and others, many, many others. Not to mention propping up warlords who, may I remind you, not necessarily better than the Taliban. Let's just keep it 100 here about all that. And in the meantime, the media saying how bad it is going. Oh, it's so bad in Kabul, it's so bad. It's been bad. Soldiers have been at risk. Soldiers have been dying. Civilians have been displaced and dying. But you weren't covering it 2 weeks ago. You weren't covering it 4 weeks ago. You weren't covering it 18, you were not covering it so long as it maintained a status quo of a just awfulness, right? Yeah. Like that no one was covering it, but now we want to talk about it, and now we care once again. So I am so sick and tired of having my empathy for the Afghan people be used in order to further a US imperial occupation of another country, all right? We need to end that. We need to understand what real solidarity and real empathy looks like, and it has nothing to do with a continuance of US military involvement in the Middle East.
Let me ask you a question to what you were just saying about the media. Obviously, I mean, some of our viewers are young enough that they probably don't remember, but we know what the media was like in the run up to the wars 20 years ago. And right now, the media isn't doing too well ratings wise. And Biden in theory would kind of like to have something maybe in a hypothetical sense dominating the news that isn't about his lack of ability to get anything passed. I have no idea whether these are true of any individuals or groups or whatever. This is just mere speculation, but these are the sorts of conditions that produce, pushes for continued war and stuff like that. Are you worried that we could see a sharp swing in the political media and the Biden administration?
Honestly, not really. I mean, we'll see what Biden says today, but hearing, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken speak on this, get pushed on this by mainstream media, and sticking to his guns about the fact that we needed to leave, almost makes me respect the Biden administration in a way that I haven't before. Like respecting the fact that there was no good way out of this war. There's no good way out of a bad war. That is period. And so in order to cut your losses after 20 years and fully embrace look, this is how it had to be done. What is the other option? Slowly maintaining smaller and smaller amounts of American forces. What happens then? American forces are surrounded. They are without support. You risk more firefights. You risk more lives. Was that the way to go? What if the headlines were, 100 American forces surrounded by 500 Taliban get murdered in a town square? Oh, that's a great headline, right? Yeah. Like that is obviously. So I'm almost proud of Biden saying we are dismantling, we are taking apart this American imperial venture known as the war on terror. It's done. Now, of course, they're not going to say they failed, quote unquote, which by the way, we know that there was no success, wasn't even delineated. So what the hell was that supposed to look like? But this is as good, I think, as it gets when it comes to really trying to turn a corner when it comes to what the US military's role is in the world. Yeah, and those who I guess were against withdrawal
when it was announced a year ago or whatever, or the multiple times it was announced over the last 10 years, might say now, well, look, it's going horribly. Well, like who didn't think? What serious person didn't think that there would be really bad ramifications? Sometimes all paths suck. That's the way it sometimes goes. And there's a bunch of people that were advocating for this to have been done years ago or never to have been initiated in the first place. There's a lot of erasure of alternative paths that we didn't go down as a country. Anyway, in terms of the narrative around blame, we are gonna have a little bit more on that. I wanna take our first break though, get a few of your thoughts from out there in the audience. We're gonna return to some more of the political implications in anticipation of Biden's address. So we'll be back in just a few. Welcome back, everyone. First of all, I want to welcome JNT for becoming a tier 1 member on YouTube, and Raichi Ra for becoming a tier 2 member and thus getting access to those weekly top 10 lists. Okay, so in the super chats, Jason P says, in 01, I was in the Navy and among the first deployed after 9/11. Like you, I don't have a way to properly articulate what is happening now. It is surreal and makes all the efforts of the last 20 years seem pointless. Yeah. I saw, Francesca, did you see the female service member, her thread of she had served in Kabul for quite a while, talking about all of her experiences there and what she expected to happen when we left? I wish I had the name. It was amazing, but it just so like the experience of people on the ground is so disconnected from the politics. Like there are politicians who've been in office the entire time this conflict has been on, just endlessly supporting continued. They didn't know anything about it. They didn't know anything about it when they started it.
And no one but veterans on the ground, no one but those combat soldiers understood just what a Sisyphean and task this war was, and just what a just an endless failure that it was. They, because even their generals were whitewashing the information. Even, their higher ups were cooking the books and making it look like everything was fine and hunky dory. And they knew, they were the ones with their bodies on the line, knowing that there is no point to this war. Yeah.
By the way, 2 people in the audience, thank you to Washa and Jacolby. It is in fact Laura Jadid that I was talking about, independent journalist now, previously service member. So those threads are available on Twitter right now. Vicky Gray, thank you for your super sticker. You're amazing. Raja Harris says, hey, John and Francesca. So Johnny Pie, how was the song Nickel Bags by Digital Planets dope, right? I did watch it. I had not realized when I queued it up that was an old school song and video. That took me back to my youth. Thank you. John Shepard, thank you for your super chat. Ferret Queen says, have you noticed any similarities between this and what happened with the people after Daenerys took Slaver's Bay? I can't be the only one. I cannot say that was a thing I was thinking about, but thank you. I appreciate the comparisons to literature. Umberto says, it seems incredibly hard as an external power to nation build. In recent memory, that only worked post-World War II under very different circumstances. Yeah, I had to talk with a friend about that. It is very difficult to come up with really any example that really means anything. I mean, obviously there was the Marshall Plan. A lot of that was sort of re-standing up democracies. Obviously, there was the complicated situation in Germany. Japan, but Japan obviously had a centuries and centuries long history of an established bureaucracy and all that. Like it's complicated. People knew that going in, but unfortunately, they didn't win out 20 years ago. Richard Rose says, in other words, the Taliban had a more peaceful transfer of power this year than America. Let's not. It's not. Umberto also said, Afghanistan is a nation with artificial borders from the British days. That doesn't help. That's also good to acknowledge. Scott Foster says, the Russians gave up after 10 years. It's a war no one can win, not unlike Vietnam. GTFO. Also, I would like to be the old hippie dragon. Well, you are. Thank you for being here. Okay. Sorry. I think I'm coming out of the weekend with some bad allergies. Tell me what to put says, the fact that the Taliban took over the country so quickly is a testament to how useless the war was. What good did we actually do there? Well, look, I could play devil's advocate and come out, obviously for the conditions of some people living there. It was a time that was better in some significant ways. That's just playing devil's advocate though. Anyway, we got more on that, so we'll be back in just a few. I apologize, I've got some sort of bug or something, which is great in these times. Okay, with that, let's jump to a very different angle on this. We're expecting, as we're filming this, that President Biden will be speaking very shortly about what's going on in Afghanistan. But even before he decided to speak, the accusations were flowing. Everybody's pointing fingers at everyone. Nobody wants to acknowledge that the war was fundamentally wrong in a number of different ways, and that was clear more than 2 decades ago. So for instance, a former President Donald Trump called on Biden to resign in disgrace amid the Afghanistan withdrawal. This doesn't matter. I acknowledge that before saying it, but I want to play just a little bit of his speech from 1 month ago where he was talking about the withdrawal. Take a look at this.
Started the process, all the troops are coming back home. They couldn't stop the process. 21 years is enough, don't we think? 21 years. They couldn't stop the process. They wanted to, but it was very tough to stop the process when other things are at. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a shame. 21 years by a government that wouldn't last. The only way they last is if we're there. What are we going to say? We'll stay for another 21 years, then we'll stay for another 50. The whole thing is ridiculous. So we're bringing our troops back home.
Okay, so like I know that everybody's gonna claim that they were right or whatever. But he was saying a month ago, they're only there as long as we're there. We gotta go. Biden is trying to keep us there. He's wrong to keep us there. He should be leaving. So they're leaving, and yeah, this is what you said this was gonna happen. So why are you saying that he should resign? But it's not just him. I mean, you go to Fox News, they have finally found something other than critical race theory to talk about. Critics blame Biden for rapid fall of Afghanistan. You can see the screenshot here. If we could bring it up. Do we have that? No. Okay. Do we have the next one? It's not gonna be meaningful anymore. Anyway, okay. So then let's just dispense with the whole thing. So, Francesca, this is a war that has gone on through Biden, through Trump, through Obama, through 2 terms of Bush. I personally think the idea that any one person or administration is the one to blame seems at best purposefully simplistic. But I understand that that's what politics is about, that they're gonna point fingers at each other. If it was up to you,
yes,
what would the takeaway be in terms of who or what or which were to blame for what we've experienced? Not just in the past, day, but in the thousands of days that this war has gone on.
That would be who is George W. Bush? F him forever and ever.
Well, why is he to blame?
Because he started the war on terror. I mean, this is the entire thing.
Yeah, that's true.
I think F George Bush, F Obama for continuing it, for thinking that this was like gonna be worthwhile to send a bunch of new troops in, but the whole thing, it was fated from the beginning. And I am surprised that once Obama, by the way, killed Osama bin Laden, which Democrats really don't take credit for in the way they could, that we should have left. Done deal, and we're done. The other thing I really wanna say, and it's the only time I will give any credit to Donald Trump ever. But I remember in 2016, I was at the RNC, right? And I did a fun game where I was like, say something nice about each of these candidates. And so I had a picture of Donald Trump, and I was in the DNC, and I was like, say something nice, say something nice. And it was before, it was all sort of a game. And one guy stops and goes, and it was like, oh, his hair is kind of nice. It was all these silly things. And one guy goes, he's the first Republican to actually admit that we need to leave Afghanistan. Like, he's the first Republican to admit we need to draw down troops and leave the Middle East. Now, Trump is an unmitigated, like ferocious, bloodthirsty, aggro liar who wants to take all the oil in Iraq instead of leave some of it, right? He's like, we don't care. He probably thinks that Afghans are backwards and they're like subhuman. That's his rationale. But the one thing that both Republicans and Democrats actually agreed on, at least the people, not the politicians, was getting the hell out of the Middle East. And Trump stood out from the entire lineup of Republicans policy-wise because of that. And that really did speak to many people who felt like, why are we nation building abroad when our country is economically in need, right? When I can't get a job, etc. It was an understandable and honestly a rational reason for liking Trump's policies. And I know it sounds crazy that I'm saying that. And when you play that clip of Trump saying that they only survived because we're there, so why don't we get out? Like, I kind of appreciate that a politician is just being honest about what a failure and what a US-backed, propped up situation Afghanistan has been. It's relieving to not have it papered over and propagandized continually. Oh, we can still win. Oh, if we just do this, more troops. And so I do think that Biden is he's not saying the exact same thing that Trump is, but there is an admission that he is gonna get hounded for by the right, that of course even Trump himself is hounding him over. But remember the admission that this is a failed and was never I don't know that he's not going to admit that it was never a good war to begin with, but it was a failed project from jump. And finally, Trump was the one who set the wheels in motion for withdrawing from Afghanistan. He started talks with the Taliban. He once claimed that he loved Baradar, who's currently the new president. Yep. He loves the Taliban. Of course, he doesn't care at all about, the people who are on the, the short end of the Taliban's rule, women, children, etc. Doesn't care about that. But Trump actually did want to get out. So of course, any leg the right wing has to stand on is hollow right now.
Yeah, well, you don't think that he's worried about the all girls robotics team that I read about? You don't think he's worried? No, I don't think he is either. You're right. He was being honest, I guess, about the state of Afghanistan, except that he's also lied for years about his previous support for the wars, and he's lying now about what it means that things aren't going well. Does anyone think that he'd be resigning in disgrace if the same plan that he put into effect he was still president for? If Mike Pillow had brought him back to the White House a couple days ago, no, and Fox's stance would be totally different. And probably CNN and MSNBC's would be flipped. God knows, maybe they'll end up being super critical. We don't know exactly how the media's gonna go with this. Brian Kilmeade was saying we need to have troops there forever to make sure that there aren't new terrorist universities. I expect talks about that you're gonna start seeing a lot more about the future growth of Al-Qaeda cells and things like that. So get ready for that. But yeah, no, your analysis is obviously and predictably accurate. Bush got us in there, but Obama was president for 8 years, and Trump was president for 4 years. So I blame all of it. I blame most of the senators and the representatives that were totally cool with it and just forgot that the war even existed for literally years. And members of the military leadership, certainly the defense contractors and the politicians that they've bought, members of the media that got us into the war and then effectively defended it mainly by silence for literally years. And there was never an accounting of the failures of the media barely for individuals, let alone as institutions. And so of course they're gonna point fingers, they have to, so that you won't look at them. And them is basically everyone that's been in power for the past 2 decades, except for a few standout politicians that were against the war. People like Bernie Sanders or Barbara Lee. There's a few, obviously. There's a few members of the media that weren't supportive of it. But this is basically a massive indictment of virtually everyone who's held public power for as long as many of our viewers have been alive. And that reckoning never came. They certainly don't want it to come now. And so everyone's gonna be looking for a new narrative to point the finger at something else, to create a new development that they can then start to focus on, pretend critically. Anyway, any final thoughts on this?
It's a game of spin the bottle. The bottle's got to stop at some point. You can't just keep spinning the bottle. Biden
spin it for 20 years, I guess.
You can spin it for 20 years, and Biden has the cojones to allow the bottle to stop on him and kiss whoever is at the other end there. And it's not pretty, but I will just say, quick little plug. I do have a podcast, and I did a lot of discussion about the amount of fraud that happened in Afghanistan, in an episode called how was the Afghan war not a giant money laundering operation? But you guys should definitely listen to that because I go over just the amount of projects that were never completed in that country. Hospitals, hotels, schools, trillions of dollars gone. Billions, trillions.
Billions, at least.
Billions.
We spent trillions, like
we spent trillions.
Billions there. Also Tony Blair, by the way. Let's not forget. And a number of others. But by the way, we didn't talk much about, but usually in the morning we talk at the beginning of the show, we talk about the Bitchuation Room. Obviously there was big news, but I'm assuming that's what a lot of the talk was yesterday on the show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We had Nando Vila, it was great. We also talked about anti-vax semen. Which is apparently a thing that
has it just not been convinced yet?
Yeah, it's just very shy, very shy.
It's hesitant semen.
Yeah, no, it was a fun show. So listen to the Bitchuation Room on YouTube at Franny Fio or wherever your podcast. Thanks, John.
And I heard that you can now show your support for the show. How can you do
so
that?
Sweet. Yeah, bitchuationroom.com. You can get your Frantifa shirts, which is the squad that listens, and Bitchuation Room tote bags, all union made. I made sure, spared no expense.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, with that, we are gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna be looking at another devastated part of the world. This time we're gonna be going to Haiti. So we're gonna take a few, but we'll be back in just a sec. Man, I am all over the place. Whew.
Thank you, John. No, you're great.
You're welcome. You're awesome. I'm loading it up right now so that I can actually get one. Okay, so let's see what's going on out there in the audience. One can guess. Sarah Dunn says, this was destined to happen when troops were first sent. It is Vietnam and Saigon 2.0. Yeah, so basically, when armies stopped wearing the same shirt and lining up, wars aren't really winnable anymore. Not really in the way that you'd like. That's just not how it works anymore. But why would we learn that lesson when people make billions of dollars pretending that it isn't true? Mike Schultz says, just got my Dragon Squad t-shirt, can't wait to wear it. We'll put it on right now, Mike. Anyway, thank you for watching. Biggie Gray says, fantastic, Fran and John, great way to start the week. Here's some more love for TYT, thank you. Oh, speaking of shirts, by the way, my hair might not be purple anymore, but the shirt still is and available at Shop TYT. Sure, I may not be purple, but you can at Shop TYT. I'm probably gonna do it again, by the way, because I do feel kind of bad that it wore away as quickly as it did. We'll see, I'm gonna try to grow slightly longer hair, so maybe it'll be more visible. Anyway, Nicole Smith just said, ACA just changed my premium. My husband and I now get free medical, no change to copay, deductible, or coverage. That seems, wait, was that good news in a super chat, Nicole Smith? What? Did you send that to the wrong channel? Okay, Patrick Depew says, am I the only one convinced that the Dems will lose in 22 and 24 because of this? Seems like the kind of thing the GOP will completely exploit. Yeah, I'm fine with that being the flavor of their loss in those two elections. I mean, they're definitely gonna lose, so why not for that? Andrew says, John, I dreamt that the show had a whole new intro. It was weird. Yeah, I forgot to work on the intro over the weekend. I got some writing done in my fantasy world. I wrote about some birds. So yeah, I was doing serious work.
You wrote about birds? You're like the Marianne Williamson of novel writing? You know how she tweets birds sometimes? It's very upsetting.
No, I saw some of Marianne Williamson's tweets about what's going on in Afghanistan. I was just like, oh, Marianne, I don't know about.
No amount of rose quartz can fix this.
No, she doesn't talk about stones. She talks about birds. You should know that. And they're not real. Metal Kitty Mom subscribed for 5 months over on. Has it only been 5 months, Metal Kitty Mom? Well, thank you for being here. At tier 3, no less. Thank you. Depressed Progressive says, think of that money. We would all have healthcare and free college if we wouldn't have pissed away that money. Well, you have free 4-year public college is supposedly about $80 billion a year. So yeah, in place of the war, we could have had that. But then the defense contractors wouldn't have made so much money. Okay, let's see. Bearded and Sleeved subscribed for 3 months. Thank you. Dolores in Darkness hit 15 months. Damn, Dolores, thank you. Sojourns hit 8 months, says woo. Thank you. Dragon Penny hit 7, says 7 months, feels like yesterday. It did, thank you. Truckee Nurse Dragon gifted a tier 1 sub. Very nice of you, Truckee Nurse Dragon. Thank you so much. Intro to Gaming subscribed for the first time, as did Hidden Gem 91. Thank you so much. Barkley subscribed for 10 months. Says, so happy to celebrate my 10-month sub anniversary on a fantastic Monday. Thank you, it's very nice of you. McBoy Rap says, also, now that the Taliban has all of our weapons and vehicles, we get to replace them and pay Lockheed for more. Yeah. Marjorie Green was interviewed, I believe this morning about that, and she used it as an excuse for Americans to have more AK-47s. Somehow, I don't get it, but anyway. Okay, more news to get to. We'll be back after this. Okay, it is time to jump to very different news. No later though, hold on to your butts. Let's do this. Haiti is in the wake of an absolutely devastating earthquake. The most recent reports, almost certainly tragically already out of date, had nearly 1,300 dead as a result of the earthquake, jumping rapidly from the 724 that had been previously reported. 1297 is the current number. More than 5,700 have been injured, and of course, as is always the case in an instance like this, survivors are still being looked for, and you often have a breakdown of not only health services, but communication as well. And so we will see what it ends up being. But I wanna give you a look at what it looked like after the earthquake. So here's a bit of that footage.
Okay. Ça veut dire que caille ça tombe net. Nous avons remarqué caille ça tombe net. Ok. Quand ça tombe net, là, ok, ça soit facilement. Ok, caille ça, nous avons remarqué. Ok. Je suis avec une moto là. Ok. En pile monde frappé là, c'est l'hôpital de Valaverio.
So you can see absolutely devastating. The earthquake struck the southwestern part of the poor nation, almost completely destroying some towns, triggering landslides that also made it difficult for emergency services to get to the areas where they were needed. And for recent context, of course, the earthquake is hitting Haiti when it's already dealing with the ongoing pandemic, the recent presidential assassination, and a wave of gang violence. And by the way, Tropical Storm Grace is expected to hit the nation either tonight or early tomorrow, at a time when, again, they're not only scrambling to try to save those who can be saved, but some of their ability to do so has been compromised as a result of the earthquake. And reports say that a number of people obviously have lost their homes as a result of this, but others are worried that the buildings that remain standing might be compromised structurally. And so they've been sleeping in the streets for fear that the house or the building could fall apart at any moment. So Francesca, different sorts of tragedies, different parts of the world, absolutely devastating how much damage can be done by an earthquake 78 miles away.
No, I mean, and Haiti has been through so much. So my heart goes out to the Haitian people and my condolences. And I do feel like, once again, as we've called for on this show, that the United States can do its part by not deporting Haitian immigrants so systematically and so cruelly back to a country that is unsafe for so many reasons. And then the other thing I was gonna say is, look, we live in California, we get earthquakes. Obviously a 7.2 earthquake is a major event and has the capacity to hurt and kill people. However, when you live in an earthquake-prone area in the so-called first world, there is something called preparedness. There are homes that are outfitted and buildings that are outfitted to withstand earthquakes. And after the amount of money that has been poured into Haiti, from previous earthquakes, from previous, attempts to set up, export processing zones so we can get free trade, Victoria's Secret and Hanes underwear and all kinds of, like setting it up as this kind kind of sweatshop nation, that none of that money has gone to actually helping a country that is regularly hit by earthquakes. That none of that money has gone into helping those buildings and those homes be retrofitted to withstand earthquakes, right? And that seems to have not have been a concern by the international community, or let alone any of the leaders of Haiti. And so it is striking that, you look at this and you're like, oh, I guess it's just a tragedy, it's a global South country, and it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to mean a death sentence for thousands of people to have a 7-point earthquake. It just exposes where the money has gone and where it hasn't.
No, that's a great point. I mean, like I'm trying to come up with a natural disaster whose effects can be better mitigated than an earthquake. Like building regulations obviously are huge. Like, California, as you alluded to, is evidence of that. They used to be far more devastating in terms of loss of life. We'll see if maybe this most recent round will change the prioritization for that. I don't know. I am reading from the AP that they've done a partial survey of the damage from the earthquake. And just the partial survey found 860 destroyed homes, more than 700 others were damaged, including hospitals, schools, offices, and churches. So we'll see. I mean, obviously right now, the focus is on trying to save people who might be under rubble, those who have been made homeless by this. The prime minister has declared a 1-month state of emergency, and I'm sure there's a lot of charity that's organizing around this. We'll see how successful they are in getting aid to the people who need it. But obviously long term, with the regularity that earthquakes and other like tropical storms, things like that are hitting, building codes and regulations are obviously very necessary to be looked at. Any final thoughts?
No, only that the international community has failed Haiti time and again, and it does feel like Afghanistan, except it's not in the Middle East, right? And if it were in the Middle East, maybe there would be even more money there because strategic interests and whatnot. But how can we support the Haitian people themselves to have sovereignty and autonomy and democracy from the ground up and not imposed from corporations or from foreign entities? And it's like, I'm at a loss, this long into it. Like the international community has a responsibility, and it also has a responsibility to step away.
Yeah. Okay, we are running out of time in this first hour, but I believe we can fit in one more story. So let's actually, I'm gonna remind people of one or two things right before we do that. I apologize for not letting you know. I know everyone's eagerly anticipating who is going to be joining Dr. Rashad Ritchie on Indisputable this morning. Well, Dina Dahl will be the co-host. The first time that I remember, it's possible that Dina has been on before, but she'll be joining Dr. Rashad Ritchie on Indisputable coming up right after this program, available both on Twitch and at youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. Also want to let you know that today is the first day post multicast. So normally the Young Turks live show would stream on the Damage Report on YouTube. That has now ended, at the very least for now. So you can continue to watch it. You don't need to be a subscriber or a member or anything like that, but you will have to go to youtube.com/the Young Turks. You can subscribe, and if you want, you can ring the bell to get some small percentage of the notifications. Damn you, YouTube. But anyway, that's your best bet.
What is that? It never notifies me.
There's nothing you can do to guarantee you'll get the notifications. It makes me so mad. But anyway, that is where it'll be available. And again, you do not need to be a member, whether to the network or to the show. You don't have to do anything. It's freely available at that channel. Now, that said, let's jump into a quick update to a story that we talked about last week. On Friday's edition of the Damage Report, my garbage person of the week was Tucker Carlson for a very good reason. He, as predicted, attacked Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for her vulnerability and willingness to talk about her fears of sexual violence during the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. In talking about that, he aired a clip of AOC's conversation with Dana Bash, commenting that the Congresswoman should get a therapist, saying this is crazy. He also called her honey, and as you'll see from this screenshot, used a photo of her designed to leave his audience with the impression that either women are crazy or maybe women of color specifically are crazy, but look at her eyes in this photo. Anyway, the representative has responded to his attack saying, I couldn't care less about what this talking inferiority complex has to say, but I do feel for the women and survivors in his life who now see they wouldn't be believed or safe with him. Many survivors of assault don't tell family, friends, etc., because of how they see others treated. And that is characteristically a mature response to an incredibly misogynistic and underhanded, needless attack from one of the regrettably most watched faces in cable news. Francesca, I don't know if you had originally seen what he said on, I believe it was his Thursday show, but what do you make of this back and forth?
I mean, we talked about this a week ago, and we knew that the right was gonna come and mock AOC, a sexual assault survivor herself, someone who has had memes depicted of her being raped, who her rape is discussed online regularly. I'm sure she's gotten threats. That we knew that because they don't care, they don't have any, they see her as the enemy somehow. She's got superpowers beyond their comprehension somehow. That they were gonna go after her, and now we see that they did. They completely went after her, and it was nice to see her making it kind of about more broadly. Look at what happens when you're honest about your fears around sexual violence. This is what happens. The most watched show in the country mocks you. And then the other thing was, why was he referring to her as Sandy the whole time?
I mean, why, if you had to guess, why is he referring to her as Sandy?
I don't know, just like this is now his like nickname for her.
It's just demeaning. I don't think it's specifically demeaning for any particular, like I don't think it's a reference to anything really. I think it's just you don't need to refer to her by her chosen name or as representative or whatever. Just call her whatever you want. Call her Sandy. It sounds like a girl's thing. We're gonna treat her like she's a little girl, little Sandy. I think that's what it's about.
No, I mean, I think that was the grossest part about it. It was that he kept on being like, Sandy says Sandy. And it's like, what? I was like, did she go by this at any point in her life? No, he's just, yeah, no, he's speaking down to her. You're right, making her sound like a little girl. No, look, what do you expect? He's a garbage monster. He fills your little cute trash can way too often. And that trash can does not deserve that.
That's true. It spit it out actually later on. Okay, well, in any event, that is all the time we have in our first hour for those of you watching us on our linear platform. Thank you for watching. There is more news that we have to get to though. So we are gonna be talking about children, the new trend in hospitalization for COVID, an absolute tragedy. We're gonna break that down, give you a response from a terrible Republican governor. All that and more. We're gonna take a short break, but stick around. We'll be back after this. Welcome back, everyone. By the way, this is totally random, probably needless. I've been a little bit all over the place. The state of my throat is not helping. The state of the news isn't helping. So I apologize that the show has not been as smooth as usual. I guess I don't know. Is it not usually?
Don't ever apologize.
Maybe I'm being presumptuous.
Don't ever apologize, Iadarola.
I'm sorry, I won't.
Never back down.
Okay, thank you.
Never surrender.
I knew you were going somewhere with that. Anyway, we've got other news. Before we get back into that, though, first of all, Alan Poganowski, thank you for becoming a tier 2 member on YouTube to get access to the top 10. So we're gonna be filming it right after the show. Top 10 things Francesca and I most miss about school coming up a little bit later on. Hugh S says, love the show from Scotland. Thank you. I would love to see Scotland someday. Liberated Borg Dragon, love your name, says, in 2020 I was furloughed because of COVID. 2021, the owner of my shop is on a ventilator because of Republicans. Not sure how things will turn out. Jeez. Wow. Okay, Exoteric Dragon says, spent time in Haiti. My heart goes out to my friends around the Leogon. Not familiar with the word, but sorry to hear that, and my heart also does go out to them. Okay, Andrew says, Carlson calls her Sandy because that was her nickname in high school. It also sounds elitist and white. Well, so look, Andrew, so I am familiar with the fact that supposedly some of her personal friends called her Sandy when she was young. I would argue, though, that is not why he calls her that. That's his excuse to call her that. That's not the reason he calls her that. I think the reason he calls her that is he believes, whether it does or not, I think he believes it diminishes her. It makes her seem like a frivolous girl. Yeah. I don't think it does that. There's nothing wrong with the name Sandy.
There's no representative in front of that. I mean, I think even us just like remembering to call people representative is kind of nice. You know, they did win an election.
Yeah, and by the way, I can be petty too. You'll probably know, this is very small. You'd probably never notice. But sometimes, like when I quote Manchin in a graphic, I just put Joe Manchin. I'm petty too sometimes, sure, but I acknowledge his name is Joe. Anyway, okay, so let's see. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon says, political unrest, earthquake, and now an approaching storm. Is Haiti just the Job of nations? I feel terrible for them. Worse, I know there are plenty more countries that can't seem to get a break. That's definitely true. Todd says, I served in Marines in Afghanistan. Most of the people there are decent people. It's hurt to realize that we pretty exploit their country for profits and left them dry. So is Sergeant Dragon available? It is, and thank you for letting us know about your experience there. Finally, Morning Demon hit 15 months as a subscriber. Says 15 months and even more years of supporting TYT, but we're honestly here for Dragon Daddy. Normally that ends with Francesca, so thank you for acknowledging that I'm on the show as well. Thank you.
I was really holding out. I was like, oh.
Television the Cat subscribed for 12 months. Thank you. RC Tycoon for 11 months. Thank you for that, Engineer Dragon. Okay, we are way behind, so let's jump back into the news before Marissa cancels me. We know that hospitalizations have been rapidly rising when it comes to COVID, but one thing that isn't talked about quite enough is how hospitalizations for children with COVID are rising as well. The number of children hospitalized with COVID hit a record high of just over 1,900 on Saturday. Children currently make up about 2.4% of the nation's COVID-19 hospitalizations. Still obviously a small percentage, but a rising number. And that is with the US now having an average of about 129,000 new COVID cases per day. Jesus, and overall hospitalizations being at a 6-month high. By the way, one of the reasons we wanted to make sure that we focus on the fact that kids are not only getting COVID at higher rates, and getting hospitalized with COVID at higher rates, thanks in no small part to the fact that the Delta variant is so much stronger, but because much of what you hear about kids in COVID is the same as what it's been for a year from people like Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves, who said COVID-19 in kids is the sniffles. Yeah, well, shortly after he said that, an 8th grader in his state died of COVID, and many others are in the hospital and could be lost as well. Doctors at major children's hospitals say nearly all of their patients are unvaccinated. They are either under age 12 and not yet eligible for the coronavirus shots, or teens who put off the vaccine, and many of them probably surrounded by adults in their lives that don't get vaccinated either. Finally, we want to let you know that, not surprisingly, Florida leads the country in child hospitalizations with 247 children admitted just last week, a rate of 35 new admissions per day. And as we talk about this, we can put up this little graph that shows some of the places where it's really rough. But yeah, Francesca, it is spreading faster. It's hitting people harder, including some breakthrough cases, and even in kids who the right swore would always be safe from this.
Yeah, I mean, we put in motion a plan to reopen schools when vaccinations were going strong, and it seemed like, all right, we're gonna do this. And the Delta variant was just a twinkle in our eye, right? And just a twinkle in Dr. Fauci's eye, except it wasn't, except we all knew it was definitely coming. And it was worse, and it had spread across Europe. Anyway, but see, once inertia takes over, it's difficult to, unwind that and rewind that. The real thing to me though is these are a lot of states that have incredibly low vaccination rates, right? They have low vaccination rates all around. These are states where parents are showing up at school board meetings and decrying mask mandates and saying we need to save the children. Okay, how are you saving the children? It seems to me like wearing masks and taking COVID precautions and you yourself getting vaccinated is literally saving children. But no, that is not what save the children means. I totally right. I forgot what you were actually talking about. But and it's devastating, right? Like, and look, I don't think it's on the CDC to immediately, or the FDA to say, no, we need to immediately approve vaccinations for 12 and under. I'm glad that they're taking their time, but I think it absolutely is an indictment, of course, of anti-vax governors, anti-vax communities, and the lack of a plan B if and when we knew this virus could get worse. Look, I don't think students should be and kids should be at home anymore. I think that's terrible. However, what about some sort of outdoor setting for schools? What about allowing schools or giving schools the funding to be able to set something like that up where you can safely be distanced in person, but say outside where we know that even though there's still a risk, is much less than when you're indoors. To say nothing of the fall and the winter and what is coming. And again, my brother is a public school teacher and it is very, very scary, not just for him, but even he's vaccinated, but it really is about, kids themselves getting sick, potentially getting sick, and then also potentially getting their family sick or their grandparents sick. A lot of people do live with multi-generations in one home. So it's upsetting because we knew this would happen, and yet this feels like such a political move, of course, because COVID's been politicized. It is, we must reopen no matter what. We must do this. We were already on track to do this, so we can't take it back now, even if it doesn't make sense. Well, even if it's putting kids at risk.
It's explicitly political when governors are saying local school districts can't mandate masks or vaccination. We're gonna ban you from requiring it. And yeah, you can't vaccinate the young kids yet. It isn't allowed. Let's just jump ahead and admit that if the CDC does come out with their 6-month study or whatever, and it shows that there aren't side effects or whatever, the right isn't going to accept that. Let's just bear that in mind.
No.
But at the very least, you could require masks. You could require the adults who are serving in those schools, teachers and support staff and stuff like that, to be vaccinated. They're not doing any of these things. And look, I know it's that time of the Monday episode, Francesca. This was discussed on John Oliver's program over the weekend. It's totally true. God. It's not like I have a really bizarre, strong opposition to child masking or whatever. It's I don't do any of these things. You're not gonna mask. We're not getting vaccinated. We're not going to be socially distancing. We're not gonna be contact tracing. We're not gonna do literally anything, which makes any one of those individual excuses you use seem pretty hollow when your overall stance is we should not be protected in literally any way. And we will probably just end up changing the subject as more and more kids end up in hospitals and more kids end up dying as a result of it. That 8th grader isn't going to convince Tate Reeves any more than the 5-year-old that died of COVID in Marjorie Greene's district is gonna convince her to take it seriously either. But hopefully it'll convince some parents. And to finalize this section, the goal of all of this coverage is to keep you informed, but also hopefully to influence people to take it seriously. And For the first time in some time, more than 1 million people got vaccinated in one day. So there is at least some evidence that the recent uptick in either cases and or coverage are leading people to want to get vaccinated. The rate is still far too low considering how available the vaccine is. I walked past a Rite Aid today that was providing it, and yet a lot of people aren't still getting vaccinated, but the rate is going up. And so that is at least some good news. Any other thoughts?
No.
Okay, well, let's move to an unfortunate bit of news. There's an endless amount of COVID-related misinformation that we need to fact check. Here's one of the dumbest ones. So Candace Owens recently shared a CDC article that she believed proved that the CDC was considering rounding up people at risk of getting COVID and putting them in camps. So let's just put this out there. It's not happening. But here is her thing. Holy yes, the CDC actually put together a document to discuss putting high-risk people into camps to shield low-risk people from them. No, this is not a joke. And yes, every single person who has made a reference to 1930s Germany is vindicated, except that they're not, because that's not what the document actually said. The document presents considerations from the perspective of the US CDC for implementing the shielding approach in humanitarian settings, as outlined in guidance documents focused on camps, displaced populations, and low resource settings. So what that means is, it is not about putting people into camps to stop them from getting COVID. It's stopping people from getting COVID who are already in camps. They're in refugee camps. We're trying to not have it spread as rapidly as COVID has shown to do in places like refugee camps, prisons, things like that. Oh, one other note, the article is from last year. So if it was the government like in a tyrannical way trying to like put people in camps, it wasn't Biden. So what are you talking about? Now it's one, so let me give Francesca a chance to jump in because she will eventually respond to the multiple layers of fact checking and how freaking wrong she was on all of this. But she believed that they were all vindicated, Francesca, that this was the tyrannical CDC that she was worried it would be.
Yeah, she's just sad, because she saw Outbreak and she was like, they want to do this. They want to put liberal Dustin Hoffman, Hollywood, and turn us into, I don't know, whatever. That was a great film. The point is that there is a humanitarian situation in this country, and it is happening on the US-Mexico border. And for all that the right likes to talk about how much COVID is being imported from the southern border, forgetting that, oh yeah, Florida is the hotspot and migrants are not swimming across the Gulf, y'all. But like, this is clearly, there is an attempt to at least try and keep the people who are detained safe. If you ask me, I don't think they should be detained because the one thing that leads to more infection is when you put people together. But clearly this was like an effort to understand, all right, where are there people who are being housed in mass, whether it's in this country or whether it's internationally. But yay, of course, Candace Owens is going to bad faith spin everything and misunderstand literally what is up and what is down.
Yep, Mac Baines in the Twitch chat said it's yet another self Owens. Yeah, and so look, I guess the only bit of credit I'm gonna give to her is that normally when they're proven to not just be wrong, but to be wrong in multiple fundamental ways, they just don't respond to it at all. She decided to, but this is where the credit ends. She said any government entity anywhere discussing putting people into camps against their will anywhere deserves legitimate comparison in 1930s Germany. I did not imply that mass murder would occur, nor did I mention the word Holocaust or genocide. Yeah, but you still seem to think they were talking about putting people in camps. That's not what they were doing. And it was under Trump. Like, you still, like, her core assertion wasn't the vindication. It was that the CDC was going to be putting people in camps. You just were shown that that was untrue. So like, she's admitting that she was wrong, but about the most shallow part of the many ways that she was wrong. And I don't know why I would expect anything else. But anyway, if you've seen this going around on Facebook, it's not true. They're not gonna be putting people in camp. Anyway. Okay.
She's like, when people go to Yellowstone with their families, that is literally the Holocaust. These are death camps. I don't care if you got trail mix and you're going on hikes. It is also, it says there's camp in it. So I'm gonna make the Hitler reference. You can't take that from me. But
Vindicated.
Vindicated. The last thing I'll say is like, once again, when it comes to immigration, you could compare, if you wanted to, the conditions and the massive amounts of detainees at the border to the Holocaust. You could, but that's not what the right does, because they love that, they laud that, they support that. They want more of that. They want to take children away from their families. They want to deport en masse. They like that. They want more private prisons. Ooh, they love that. They love the amount of people that are behind bars for nonviolent drug offenses. Give me more of that. So please spare us with the camp talk and just like, Candace Owens, not everything. What is the term when everything is compared to the Holocaust? I'm sure the chat knows, but Candace Owens has that.
There's a term like that for Nazis.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one specifically for the Holocaust, but yeah, it's just they want to be victims. Their base wants to feel like they're victims, and so sure, like at some point you have to compare them to some of the worst victims in the history of our world. Anyway, okay, we are rapidly running out of time. Let's see what we can get to. So we're gonna jump directly into this video and discuss.
Unmask them all! Unmask them! Unmask them all!
Okay, well, that video that you just saw was taking place outside of Los Angeles City Hall on Saturday. It was an anti-vaccine rally that turned violent with at least one individual being stabbed and a reporter saying that they had been assaulted. There was a crowd of several hundred people, many holding American flags and signs calling for medical freedom. There was a few dozen counter protesters that had amassed as well. And at some point there was violence between them. So there was clashes caught on video. You might have seen it going around on social media. But if you saw the take from the police in the area, the LAPD said on Twitter that they were monitoring a protest at the South Lawn of the LA City Hall, on scene to maintain order after a fight broke out. Yeah, they can sometimes jump in after the Proud Boys that are there get their shots in, but we're aware of one male that was stabbed and is being treated. No arrests have been made, but investigation is ongoing. You can see here a post by them on Instagram as well. And so what I wanted to talk to you about, Francesca, was it seems like, and you can see by the way in the Instagram post, they talk about Antifa, not about the anti-vaxxers, the Proud Boys, the right-wing provocateurs that come in to stab people and get away with it. And so it feels kind of like a Portland situation where the police are there, they're watching the right-wingers engage in violence, and then they do PR for the right-wing groups afterward, only identifying Antifa as being a part of it, regardless of how visible the other side was. The fact that individual members of it have been identified on social media, people who still haven't been arrested for participating in the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. Members or leaders of these organizations, the organization that went online to get them to there in the first place. The police are always there to make it just about Antifa.
Yeah, that caption says capitalized Antifa, like it's an official organization.com, right? Incorporated, and people gathered for the permitted event. Who were the people? What was their organization? If it's a permitted event, there has to be a name given, right? But no, they're gonna continue to run cover. Honestly, I am so tired of seeing, no difference between anti-vax, Proud Boys, the whatever percent, boogaloo boys, I don't know, like, Muppet fascist babies. Like, I'm tired of seeing them decked out in their goggles and their tactical gear and not even seeing the difference between who is a police officer and who is actually a so-called free medical freedom protester, right? Like, it is they're increasingly one and the same, and you see that in the way that the cops consistently protect these white supremacists, and honestly, folks who often instigate this violence. And the sad fact is that this is happening in Los Angeles, in California, which is ostensibly more liberal, more progressive. But there has been an unholy alliance between a certain wellness community of people who have money and means, who believe that their non-FDA approved supplements will help them and give them all the sort of like the strength they need, and their whatever, like a protein goop juice that they've bought from Gwyneth, like that segment, and the QAnon Proud Boys, highly MAGA conspiracy theory segment, and the pandemic has united them. The vaccine has united them. That's why you're seeing some of this happen in LA. And there is also an undercurrent of other things that have happened in Los Angeles, including some anti-trans protests outside of a spa that allows trans people to use the spa, right? That also resulted in violence, that also saw the police running cover for some known white supremacists. So it is very unsettling.
Cover for just constant street violence of right wingers. They have latched on like parasites to these, the things they're latching onto are terrible in their own right, but all of it just ends up being their foot soldiers get in the street, start stabbing people, and the police protect them. And so all of this footage identifying people, will it result in them figuring out who it was that was stabbing someone, or tracking down people who were there on the 6th? We'll see. Kind of doubt it based on the recent history. Francesca, we're unfortunately out of time. I wish that we had more, but want to thank you for joining us. Where can people listen? Bitchuation Room.
Wherever you get your podcast, the Bitchuation Room, or you can watch it live 5/8 Eastern every Sunday on my YouTube channel at Franny Fio. Remember, give me some love on my channel. We're trying. We've got merch. Da 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 da.
You've got merch. You can go to the shop and get a shirt. They don't sell the protein goop juice. You have to buy that directly from Gwyneth.
I'm rolling out supplements. I'm rolling out liberal tier supplements. One last note, I will be in Portland for a live episode of the Bitchuation Room on Thursday, September 2nd. So you can get tickets already. It's like bit.ly/TBR Portland. And I'm maybe convincing John Iadarola to come with.
But that sounds delightful.
It's on air, so he can't say no. He can't say no.
Pandemic.
He's coming.
We'll see.
He's coming. Okay, bye.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Go away. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Francesca and I are gonna go and film our top 10 list in just like a minute, but we got a lot planned for this week. Jordan's gonna be here tomorrow, so you're not gonna wanna miss it. Reminder again, the multicast is done. Watch The Young Turks, but watch it at youtube.com/The Young Turks or on Twitch. That's where it'll be freely available. Thank you everybody for being here. Until next time. Stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.
Yep, welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richey, good to be with you. We got a lot on the agenda today. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking down news of the day with me, none other than Dina Dahl, law and crime legal analyst. And for my bullpen debate segment, yep, it's back, it's live, and we're ready. Hannah Cox, brand ambassador for Fee Online, host of Based, and she's making a case against student loan forgiveness in the United States of America. What a hell of an argument. All right, that should be a fun bullpen. Ladies and gentlemen, my top news story for today. Even if the policies are correct and the mandates are proper, there are still parents who are irresponsible as hell. Let me highlight a particular parent. There's a student who tested positive for COVID. The parent tested positive as well. First day of school, this parent decides, hey, it's a good idea for me to still send my child to school to infect every other student in that school system. More than 80 students were potentially exposed to COVID-19 on the first day of class in Reno, Nevada. On Monday, after a parent sent their child to Marcy Hers Middle School, despite both the parent and child receiving a positive COVID-19 test just 2 days earlier. Washoe County Health District officials said the exposed students had to quarantine at home and started distance learning on Tuesday. The county school district mentioned this as well. This is a huge school campus, by the way. Let's show a picture of this school. That's just a portion of it, okay? Huge. All right. In a Tuesday letter sent to parents of impacted students, Principal Brandon Bringhurst said that if their child is fully vaccinated, parents can bring the vaccination card to school and the student can resume in-person classes immediately. Impacted students can also take a COVID-19 test on or after August 14th. And if they test negative and don't have symptoms, they can return to school on August 17th. We are not seeking to invest our limited resources in bringing charges against the parent at this time. That is the official stance of the district at this moment, okay? We are seeking cooperation from our community members, but we have seen Black parents in particular be arrested because they decided to sign their child up in a school district they in fact did not live in, and they were incarcerated, charged, and some of them charged with a felony. Okay, kindergarten through 12th grade students, staff, and parents and visitors of this county are required to wear face coverings inside school buildings, regardless of vaccination status per state directive. So what does this say? This says clearly that the policy is proper. The mandate is affixed correctly. This is a good on paper policy. But culture, ladies and gentlemen, will eat policy alive every day. So while you may have the policy dynamic correct, if the cultural expression is still adversarial to the policy, here's what you get. Students who are now at risk like never before. Hospitalizations, including among younger Americans, are climbing, and students younger than 12 are still ineligible for a vaccine. In some states, including good old Texas and Florida, local leaders have found themselves at odds with their governors over school mask mandates. The current COVID-19 positivity rate in this county, Washoe County, was 17%. And the number of cases for children up to 17 years old jumped by roughly 2.6 times between June and July. According to the health district, they expect that number to increase even more. Just days after fall classes started for Florida's Brevard Public Schools, and after the school board voted against a mask requirement, there are more than 470 COVID-19 cases among students and teachers, and roughly 1,060 people quarantined. That's according to the latest information from the district. Of the 473 positive cases, roughly 385 are students, 88 are employees. That's according to the data. Who made this decision to vote against the mask requirement? These dumbasses. They're the ones who did it, okay? Them. They are putting children at risk. Once again, not just them, but everyone who thinks like them, including their governor. To break this down and a whole lot more, we have legal analyst Dina Dahl. Listen, how can they get away with this legally? It is obviously putting children in not only danger, but in a life and death situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple legal issues here, both with the Nevada instance and the Florida. Now, the Florida, the governor there did that executive order saying that the counties couldn't have a mask mandate. And there's actually 2 lawsuits right now trying to say that that mandate is unconstitutional, because the Florida Constitution says that a school needs to be a safe environment. Right. And so him not allowing them to have mandates, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, there's tons of research and scientists showing that masks keep students safe. And we see things like this, right? I mean, schools have dress codes, where they tell girls how they should be dressed. So the fact that the governor is not allowing them, you could see this even as a simple dress code to wear a mask, is mandating them not to do that is, highly unusual. And the second lawsuit, that's another one of their points, is that the county itself should have, legislation over their own county. But the problem is that these lawsuits are going to take a while, and in the meantime, these parents, who want their child to have an education and maybe really want them to be in person, are facing this unsafe environment, like the lawsuit is saying, because these masks are now making it very unsafe for them. So that's the struggle. Is like you can look at it legally, but the law can take a long time, and the parents don't have that kind of time when they're trying to decide whether or not to send their child to school.
Yeah, the irony of it all. Republicans used to stand for a platform that said less government is better government. They used to stand against increased government intrusion. However, they are now the biggest catalyst to government intrusion as it relates to masks, as it relates to children, as it relates to women and everything else. As long as it hits their narrative, they don't give a damn about their own political ideology or platform philosophy. That's hypocritical to the highest. Okay, let me shift gears, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, anti-vaxxers, the Proud Boys, these folks teamed together in order to assault others, to stab people, and no arrests have been made. I kid you not. This is an anti-vax rally. It became violent on a Saturday with at least one person stabbed. There may be more. A reporter assaulted after a crowd of several hundred people amassed outside of LA City Hall. Additionally, LAPD, they are facing harsh and justified criticism for how they framed it in their Instagram post. Let's first look at some of this video.
Unmask them all! Where's Chandler? Bring his ass! Bring his ass! Come on!
Let me remind you that the Trump supporters, anti-vaxxers, and Proud Boys, one and the same, they are the aggressor here. They are committing multiple acts of criminal violence. Multiple felonies are taking place right in front of you. Not one person has been arrested. Not one. No arrests have been made as of yet. One Twitter user identified the following individuals from that video: a Proud Boy member named Adam Kiefer, Capitol rioter named Tony Moon, and anti-vaxxer named Roman Gilbert. Okay, those individuals have been identified. More people are attempting to identify others. According to the LA Times, a fight erupted on the corner of 1st and Spring Streets shortly after 2:30 p.m. as counter-protesters in all black and anti-vaccine demonstrators draped in American flag garb and Trump memorabilia traded punches and threw things at one another. It was not immediately clear how the fight started, though each side quickly blamed the other. That's according to the LA Times. One person who the anti-mask protest claimed was part of their rally could be seen collapsed in the intersection bleeding. Police on the scene said the person had been stabbed and paramedics arrived to take him to the hospital. Let's show that stabbing. Okay, so I think that's the aftermath. Okay, that's the aftermath of the stabbing. There seems to be another stabbing as well, according to one Twitter user, Chad Loader. Proud Boys from Bakersville, California were the ones doing said stabbing. So that provides a little more context to the violence here. Here's a video of a possibly different man being stabbed during that brawl. Let me remind you, not one person has been arrested. Ladies and gentlemen, if you had black people stabbing folks like this in any city in the United States of America, there will be arrest, there will be a call to emergency, all kind of things would have happened. Nothing happened here. The police came gingerly. When they ended up coming, they ended up kind of just walking up as if they had always been there and there was no real emergency. KPCC reporter, a short time after this, KPCC reporter Frank Stoltz could be seen walking out of the park near City Hall, being screamed at by anti-mask protesters. One man could be seen kicking him. He's a reporter. He later told a police officer he had been assaulted while trying to conduct an interview. Here's what he said about the incident on Twitter. Frank said, and I quote, "Something happened to me today that's never happened in 30 years of reporting. In LA, I was shoved, kicked, and my eyeglasses were ripped off of my face by a group of guys at a protest outside of City Hall during an anti-vax recall Governor Newsom pro-Trump rally." The LAPD, they are being criticized as well because of their Instagram post. Let's put that post up for everyone to see. LAPD headquarters, the LAPD is monitoring a protest at the south lawn of the Los Angeles City Hall at 1st Street and Main Street. We are on the scene to maintain order after a fight broke out between Antifa and people gathered for the permitted event. You see how they're, okay. You see how they're framing it, right? Okay. We are aware of one male that was stabbed and being treated by fire department personnel. No arrests have been made, but investigation is ongoing. You don't say. You don't say. My dear sister, what are your thoughts here?
You know, thank goodness for video, first of all, because we could all see exactly what happened there. And my first thought when I watched it was how badly those anti-vaxxers wanted to fight. they were excited to kind of line up and like do this. And, we have to realize as a country, this is gonna keep happening because they want it to happen. They want a fight now at every rally. January 6th was like an awakening of sorts. And this is gonna keep happening. And the fact that the police were there and yet weren't there is very troubling, because you see that man could have gotten beaten to death, really. A friend of his comes and takes him out of the crowd, and there's a woman that gets hit with a water bottle just brutally. So there's the stabbing, there's a lot of violence there, and it's right there in front of the police, it's right there in front of City Hall. We see the reporter. So, I really hope that there's a real reckoning, not only with LAPD, but across the country. There has to be this awareness that this is gonna keep happening because they want it to happen. What are we gonna be willing to do to stop it?
Very well said. And they're not being punished to the degree of their criminality. And that's another reason why they are more emboldened than ever before. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a public service announcement, basically. Sometimes when things happen, especially in redneck world, you have to watch out for three people. You have to watch out for the person in the overalls, the person with the most massive beer belly, and the guy named Randy. I have to pose the question, ladies and gentlemen, what in the redneck hell? Okay, there were bikers. They had a conflict with some individuals in a pickup truck. Here's the first video. Okay, you saw the guy in the overalls, he came out with a gun. Here's the guy with the most massive beer belly. Gotta look out for him too.
Hey, we'll get on the shit. We'll get on our bikes. The real deal. Hey, get on. We'll get on our bikes and leave. Do it. Okay, just stop it. All right. Get up. I'll kill you. I'll kill your boy. All right. Don't come up. I'm gonna say this one more time. I'll take that gun. I'll have a problem with you. Fucking problem with him. Get out of me. This mother. Get out of here. I'm a biker myself.
And by the way, just to note, everybody was okay. Even the guy laying down on the ground, he did get up. But you see the two people so far, guy in the overalls, the guy with the massive beer belly. And then when everything seemed to be calmed down, all of a sudden, here's a guy named Randy.
Here.
What have we learned here, ladies and gentlemen? If you ever find yourself in a redneck brawl, look out for the guy in the overalls, the guy with the massive beer belly, and the guy named Randy. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. Yeah. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I've seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Welcome back. We got a lot on the agenda. Let me go to some of these viewer comments. TYT member, cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug, says, this is why folks want vaccine passports. That's right. You can't trust folks to be accountable these days because it somehow interferes with their freedoms. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, says, I demand my constitutional right to choose not to mask. Unmask them. I demand the right to take away your constitutional right to choose to wear a mask. That is ironic, is it not? YouTube super chat. Nicolette Horates. Proud Boy action is a direct reaction to the largest sustained civil rights protest in US history. That's why the cops let them. Megan Satanas. If any one of those kids die, their parents should be held accountable and put in prison for it. Ignorant. Ashley, my 11-year-old friend who is in in-person school said no one is wearing masks. Shaking my head. Damn shame. Burb says, I love this show, Doc. I am happy this your new home. Happy to be here. Non-applicable says, too bad police could do nothing to prevent this stabbing. If only we had a department full of people protecting and serving us. Exactly. Twitch, Duwu 87. Doc is in the house. Hope you had a great weekend, sir. I did. I hope you had a great weekend also. Thank you. T-0. I can see the parents of infected children joining together against her in a civil lawsuit. Very true. Fat guy named Tiny says, you never see cops and anti-vax, anti-mask rallies. For the same reason, you never see Clark Kent and Superman in a room together. That was pretty good. Carp ODB. There was pics of the ponytail guy yelling, unmask them, assaulting a female reporter too. Yes, that's very true. Lisa Egan. To be fair, their beer belly could be a weapon of mass destruction. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring your attention to what's happening in Afghanistan, okay? This is why people don't like American involvement. America has effed up all of Afghanistan, okay? Now, if you took sides with America in Afghanistan because of what's happening now with the Taliban and the regime and the new control, you may have a death sentence in that country. And obviously, these people are trying to preserve their lives, to preserve the lives of their families. Chaotic scene unfolded at Kabul's airport as thousands of people rushed the tarmac in desperate attempts to flee Afghanistan following a takeover by the Taliban, okay? This was hard to watch. The Afghans are clinging to a US Air Force transport plane. Others show people falling from the wheel well of the jet just before taking off. Here's some video. So sad, so sad. It is especially dire for women in Afghanistan. Here's a video.
I can't believe the world abandoned Afghanistan. Our friends are gonna get killed, they're gonna kill us. Our women are not gonna have any more rights, and that's all.
No easy solution, especially if you are a person who says the American government should not be involved in these imperial takeovers of other countries. But America broke it, okay? The least America could do is create a program so that we can actually accept individuals that we have put in complete 100% danger. We did that to them. The first female mayor of Afghanistan, Afghanistanians, excuse me, first female mayor, Afghanistan's first female mayor, excuse me, Zarifa Ghaffari, excuse me, I'm getting it right, I'm getting it together, guys, said in the press conference, and I quote, "I'm sitting here waiting for them to come. There is no one to help me or my family. I'm just sitting with them and my husband, and they will come for people like me and kill me. I can't leave my family, and anyway, where would I go?" Dire is an understatement for what's happening in Afghanistan. Ms. Dahl, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I agree. At this point, this is a humanitarian crisis. And as you said, it's affecting women differently. If you see on that video, the people on the stairs to go on the airplane, they're all men. And the reason is probably because the women are hiding, because they know that this is going to be much worse for them. And I don't know how many people will be able to help get out at this point. I think the airport is going to be taken over by the Taliban any minute or hours or days. But it's startling how quickly they fell, because we have spent 20 years there trying to help build up a military and gave them a lot of military equipment, and there were rarely any shots fired. So, there was some alliance there with the Taliban, and some people are okay with the peace, and it is complicated. But at the end of the day, they're, like you said, our allies and our friends there are going to suffer, and the women there are going to suffer under the Taliban, and it's heartbreaking watching it.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. Obviously, no easy solution, but you have to provide some leadership here. And you have to provide some opportunity for protection, which the United States government has failed to do for the individuals that they put in danger themselves. All right, ladies and gentlemen, shifting gears, I wish a Karen would. Okay, we're having a tech issue.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
You're still free! Back off!
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Over there? Okay, that's why you call it. You're recording me right now. Okay. You recording me? And
Okay.
Okay. You and your phone.
Okay.
Get the out of here.
I live here.
How long have you lived here?
It doesn't matter.
Like a month?
Doesn't matter.
Get the out of here.
Make me.
You know what? Bitches like you are the reason cell phones are a thing these days. Okay? Get the out of here.
I don't have to do anything.
Bitch, I lived here for a year and a half. Get the out of here.
I'm not going anywhere, woman. What is with you? I'm not going anywhere. I'm walking my dog. What is your problem, Karen? What is your problem? Come over here. I'll call the cops. I will call the cops. I will call the cops. Back it up. Back it up. I will call the cops. Someone better come get her. I'm not going to jail for this lady.
Get your
ass out of my face.
Really?
What is wrong with you?
Listen.
What is wrong with you?
Really? That's enough.
What is wrong with you? I wasn't doing anything. I'm walking my dog.
Tell her
I'm walking my dog.
Ma'am.
I'm not going anywhere.
My. Black female, black woman, she's walking her dog. She can't walk her dog in peace. This Karen starts to act even more like a Karen after she is called out for being a Karen. I don't see how that helps her case whatsoever. And yes, the black woman who said, hey, it doesn't matter how long I have lived here. That's correct. It doesn't matter. She lives there. Who cares how long she has lived there? As if the longevity of your residency is a prerequisite to your ability to walk your dog in your community, in your neighborhood, without being violated by this Karen. Here's some background. According to the TikTok user Ty, recorded this Karen moment while walking her dog around the apartment complex in Florida. We're getting so many Karens out of Florida these days. The follow-up videos explains how Karen, totally unprovoked, started yelling at her to get out of here, prompting Ty to start recording. Now, according to the narrative, all of this was 100% unprovoked. That's why they started recording. She has not yet reported the incident to the leasing office, and police are not able to do anything other than say she could place a restraining order on this person. Police also said that because she stood her ground against the Karen, had she at any point actually hit the Karen, Ty would have been charged with battery. Those are your updates to this particular Karen story. Attorney, let me ask you this, because that doesn't sound right to me. That if you are standing where you're standing and a person aggressively approaches you, right? And you obviously are in reasonable fear that they are going to do something to harm you, and you physically protect yourself. According to her, the police said if you would have done something to this Karen who approached you, you would be going to jail for battery. Is that the way the law works?
Well, it's interesting because we're in Florida, which has a stand your ground law.
Right.
And that's kind of what made me start thinking about that when you were talking, because you can literally shoot somebody, if you think that they're going to be entering your home, and here she's protecting herself. I mean, it probably depends on whether or not you see what the Karen did rises to some sort of level of assault, like whether or not she felt, Ty felt threatened by her and there was self-defense. So, there's a little bit of ambiguity there that a lawyer on either side can argue. So for the police to maybe have said such a black and white statement as to that effect is probably not true. But it's interesting in Florida, where self-defense is something we hear about all the time, that they would take a position like that.
Yeah, but you know good and damn well that black folks don't get the same privilege in making those doctrinal claims when it comes to self-defense, right? Those claims have been held up by court systems, typically for white males, but also obviously through extension, white females, and the same benefit of that legal doctrine has not been applied equally to black individuals who are being attacked.
Right, and I think this is a perfect example of that, and kind of the flip is how how the Karen keeps talking about how she lived there longer, that like sense of entitlement, that sense that the law is on her side, the ownership of this space that they're in is on her side. And it is because, like you said, we see that play out over and over and over. So that sense of entitlement is based in fact. It's not just theoretical.
That's right.
knows the law is gonna be on her side. And so that's why she's much more willing to do that.
Very well said. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories. Gee, I wonder why we didn't get $15 minimum wage. Because they're all raising money from the guys who don't want to increase the minimum wage.
And we play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The Republicans say we will serve our corporate masters at all costs, including killing democracy, yet here we are. Where else do you hear that? You hear that on NBC, on ABC, on CBS? You hear it nowhere.
They don't want to talk about money in politics because it's really hard to pass judgment when your media organization is funded by fossil fuel companies.
The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, the defense contractors, the Wall Street, or the big pharma. And we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country.
Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not seeing how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change.
What's happening? Welcome back. Let me read some of these comments. We got a lot of them. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, says, I know nothing about military planning, but shouldn't the evacuation have been planned before removing troops? Yes, we needed to get out, but having no plan is disgusting. It reminds me of watching the Vietnamese standing on rooftops, actually throwing their children into the open doors of helicopters as they took off. Well, they're leaving the same way they came. There was no plane going in, there's no plane coming out. That's the reality of American interference. LMG 15, my heart goes out to the people who are so desperate to leave that they hung on the plane's exterior. Just think about the level of desperation involved in something like that. It's despair. Super chat, Charles Massey. How much you want to bet we declare war on the Taliban and start bombing again? Yeah. Kelly O'Hara says, Afghans will die because we lie about the nature of the American ideal's dream. It's just a cruel scheme. What a joke, makes me choke. Thank you, Kelly, very well said. Tam, I'm a veteran. The women did not have rights under any leadership. Very true. Nika Nostalgia says, yes, I gotta get a I Wish a Karen Wood shirt too. They're coming, they are coming. Susie says, a Karen pulled the plug on us. No, Brett dabbed again and the power went out. That's what happened. Sonic Boom Dragon 23, Karen was mad because I had a barbecue on a Sunday. That's what happened. She was upset about that still. Mick Boy Raps, haha, when she gets her eyebrows done, she says, give me that evil angle. You notice the eyebrows too, I noticed them as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you believe in QAnon and you are a parent, we need to check some things out in your household. That's just a reality. QAnon woman says anyone who votes yes on mask mandates will be tried for crimes against humanity. This is an anti-vaxxer QAnon person in Johnson County, Kansas. This was at a commissioner meeting, and here's what she had to say.
I'm from Overland Park, and I'm here for the children. There is zero evidence that COVID-19 exists in the world. PCR tests are recalled. This is a pandemic. Fake virus, bioweapon jab. Fake president. You will not experiment on my children. It's always been about the children. We know you're coming for the children. We will not comply. We will answer to God. People are waking up. Nothing can stop what is coming. You vote yes, you will all be tried for crimes against humanity. Children don't disappear. 800,000 children in the United States disappear. Where do they go? Human trafficking is the real pandemic. The mainstream media doesn't cover it. There's no virus. The media is the virus. The politicians, Hollywood are all involved. Please vote no today. I'm begging you. I want you to think real hard about these children. Trump won.
Okay, here's what I want to do. Okay, and I want to do this in real time. So I'm going to tell my producers, get ready because I'm going to play this video again. Okay? Here's what I want you to do as a viewer. I want you to think about if this white female, what if she was brown? What if her last name was Muhammad? What if she was Muslim and said these exact same words? Do you think people would be more outraged by these words if the religion was different, if her last name was different, or if her complexion was different? Imagine that, and now hear these words.
I'm from Overland Park, and I'm here for the children. There is zero evidence that COVID-19 exists in the world. PCR tests are recalled. This is a pandemic. Fake virus, bioweapon jab. Fake president. You will not experiment on my children. It's always been about the children. We know you're coming for the children. We will not comply. We will answer to God. People are waking up. Nothing can stop what is coming. You vote yes, you will all be tried for crimes against humanity. Children don't disappear. 100,000 children in the United States disappear. Where do they go? Human trafficking is the real pandemic. The mainstream media doesn't cover it. There's no virus. The media is the virus. The politicians, Hollywood, are all involved. Please vote no today. I'm begging you. I want you to think real hard about these children. Trump won.
You know, there are a few angles that we can obviously dissect, okay? We can talk about the illusion of a Trump victory. We could talk about her insistence that somehow this is fake news, that Biden is president of the United States. But I want to focus on something even deeper. I want to focus on comments like nothing can stop what is coming. I want to focus on comments that say you're going to be tried for crimes against humanity. I answer to no one but God, okay? In the context of what she's saying. Do you think she's being investigated by the federal government? No. Do you think anyone is going to follow up with her and try to figure out exactly what she meant by these very threatening statements? No. You know why? Because she's a white female. That's why. And she's going to receive the benefit of the doubt as it relates to these terroristic threats against other people in the United States of America. Ms. Dahl, how do you see this?
Yeah, I agree. And I also, listening to that, thought, as a lawyer, like, thank goodness for the First Amendment, actually, because I want to know what this lady is thinking and all those like her. And she said it so plainly to the point it's shocking. But all those politicians who kind of hide behind a little bit more nuanced language, they're believing what she's saying. And she said the stuff that kind of goes unsaid a lot of the time. And I'm so glad that you're actually promoting, put this on your show, because it could be easy to dismiss some of these QAnon theories as their own opinions or, things debatable, whatever. But it is scary because when she talks in that kind of language, it is a talk of, war, maybe overthrowing the government, this fact that only God is in charge, that kind of language spoken so plainly should be really taken seriously. And that's why I'm glad we have a First Amendment. I'm glad people can say all the kind of crazy stuff that's inside their heads, because then we know what's going on. And then the only question is, are we going to do something about it?
Yeah, well said. Let me give some background to the statistics, because the woman was obviously factually inaccurate. COVID is a real virus. Biden, like it or not, he is the actual president of the United States. The number of children hospitalized with COVID-19 in the United States hit a record high of just over 1,900 on Saturday, as hospitals across the South were stretched to capacity fighting outbreaks caused by the highly transmissible Delta variant. Children currently make up about 2.4% of the nation's COVID-19 hospitalizations. That number is rising. Kids under 12 are not eligible to receive the vaccine, leaving them more vulnerable to infection from the new, highly transmissible variant. Those are facts. Those are facts. Now, we can debate and argue opinion all day. We can't do that with facts. Okay, next story. There's a pediatrician named Sally Smith that I need us to all pay attention to. She is considered to be one of the most powerful people in Florida government, but she's also considered to be on a power trip, abusing her authority to separate children from their families. A Florida pediatrician, according to many reports, has made multiple false claims of abuse of the children of Saisha Mercado, which resulted in both of her children being taken by the police. Let me show you this first video.
Former American Idol contestant and Broadway actress Saisha Mercado is finding herself the face of legal kidnapping at the hands of Dr. Sally Smith. Dr. Smith is the head of the Child Protective Services and considered one of the most powerful figures in Florida child welfare. She has long been criticized for aggressively reporting child abuse and confiscating people's children. Saisha Mercado and her family are just one more victim. In February of this year, Saisha had taken her 13-month-old baby boy to the hospital. She had just found out that she was pregnant again, and she wasn't producing the amount of breast milk required to feed him adequately. So she asked for the hospital's help in getting him more fluids. After a few days, he was doing fine, and she thought she was going to be able to go home. But the hospital wanted to keep the baby for further observation. On March 11th, Manatee County Child Protective Services came to the hospital with armed officers and said they would be confiscating the baby because the parents had refused a B12 shot. She says that never happened.
But what do we do?
Yeah, what is the crime? Can you please give us a charge?
But who said we neglected? You refused the B12 shot today. I didn't refuse it. I said his father.
No. There was no refusal.
So you're saying you're taking my child away from me? I am. Right now,
That's
you can't take my child away from me. I
That's
can't.
not going to happen. Right now, in this time, I'm filing criminal charges against this hospital.
Never said I didn't do anything. This is so injustice. I didn't do anything.
The baby was removed from the parents' care and placed in foster care without trying to do a family first placement or speak to their lawyer, and they have not seen him since.
It gets even deeper than that. The incident of one child being taken was recorded by the parents. Here it is.
My baby is days old, and you're taking my baby away from me. You're taking my baby away from me. You have no heart. This is so wrong.
Just give us a second. Can you give us a second?
Don't make it seem like I'm crazy, okay?
Yeah. We support. This is normal.
I know you have children.
Sarah.
This is my baby.
You may not have babies, but
I carried my baby for 9 months.
Understand that.
This is normal.
You don't care.
Yes, I do. Put the plate.
You don't care.
Would you like to put the
You could have talked. No, I don't. I want my baby.
You have to put the baby.
My baby is healthy and happy.
Okay, put the
My baby is breastfeeding from me. What are you gonna give my baby?
Please put the baby in the car.
I'm highlighting this story because the complaints against the one individual behind this are astronomical. Let's put up a picture of Dr. Sally Smith out of Florida. That is the person, according to the reports, who has been behind all of these abuses of power. The USA Today network reviewed hundreds of that doctor's cases in conjunction with a multi-part investigation into Florida's welfare system. It found more than a dozen instances where charges were dropped, parents were acquitted, or caregivers had credible claims of innocence, yet suffered irredeemable damage to their lives and reputations because of this one doctor. Let's put up a picture of Saisha Mercado and her family. Here's a picture. Beautiful family. By all accounts, loving, nurturing. This is unbelievable. That's not the only family. There's another family. Let's pull up this other family. This is Vadim and Elina Kushner. Okay? Same thing happened to them. They celebrated the first birthday of their son, William, in July. Child abuse pediatrician Dr. Sally Smith accused them of abusing their son 6 weeks old. It has not been substantiated. And the list goes on and on. So sad, so extreme. We're gonna continue to watch this. We will monitor this, and I will bring you updates as the story develops. We got more on the other side. Stick and stay. It's indisputable.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world. We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 15 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively. What do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the void.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable, Senator Sanders. Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Ms. Dahl, it is always remarkable having you on the program. Tell people how they can follow you and check out your work.
They can follow me on AskDinaDahl1 on Twitter.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, stick and stay. We got more. The bullpen is next. All right, welcome back. Let me read some of these amazing viewer comments. We got a lot of them. I will read as many as I can. TYT member Lorraine Dobson says, took her kid for not taking a B12 shot. And remember, that's in dispute. She said, no, we didn't refuse a B12 shot. But you got to think about it in context. That would get your kid taken away from you. What happened to freedom? Why isn't she taking kids from all the anti-vaxxers? It's a good point. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon. Oh my God, crying so hard. Confiscating her baby? More like kidnapping. Is this doctor getting a kickback for every child she puts in the system? It's quite extreme. And remember, complaints have been mounting so much that multiple national publications are now viewing this doctor's history, doing an analysis, and they're coming up with the same thing. There is unequal application here, and she's putting a lot of people in trouble who should not be, a lot of parents. Spur marks, super chat. Howdy from Texas, which will hopefully turn blue in 2022. Man, that would be massive. Jill Wagner, I have lived in Florida, and it's the caring capital of the United States. I can't disagree with you there, especially given what we've seen lately. Ruber Dragon, Children's Services need to investigate her fitness as a parent. Don's Den says, I don't care what color her skin is, I believe she needs help. E pluribus ploppers. A couple of racist NJ teachers tried to legally abduct my children from me. I had a child trauma psychologist clear us, then got those teachers fired. Well, good for you, good for you. Twitch, Shamberby says, we need an emoji of Brett dabbing so we can respond appropriately when TYT has technical difficulties. Let's get on top of that. That needs to be a priority. Okay, RC Taco 13, talking about children disappearing, ... Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, I have none other than Hannah Cox, who is brand ambassador for FEE, F-E-E Online, and host of Based. We're going to debate college debt forgiveness. Ms. Cox, good to have you on the show. How are you?
Good to be with you, Dr. Ritchie.
Absolutely. I don't want to presume what you believe or proclaim about student loan forgiveness. So if you would, give us your background, your thoughts, your ideology as it relates to student loan forgiveness in the United States of America.
Sure. Well, I'm so happy you had me on to talk about this because I actually think it's a subject that I can agree with a lot of people on the left about. I myself have student loan debt. I am impacted by this. It's something I care a lot about. I am not in favor of student debt cancellation, even though I have to be totally honest, it would benefit me personally quite a bit. But I don't think it would solve the long-term problems that we face in this country, which are that the cost of college has become too expensive for most people, while simultaneously college degrees have become worth less and less over time. That also would be very regressive to take from basically the working class who does not go to college. We only have about 1 in 3 Americans with a college degree, and force them to subsidize the choices that people like myself have made while we are making more income on average. I think that's a very regressive policy. It's not equitable. And so while I can agree with the root problem here with people, which is that college is too expensive, we need to do something, we're burying people in debt, we are stunting an entire generation and preventing them from economic mobility. I don't think that canceling student loans is the way to go. I do have a lot of other ideas for ways that we could make the cost of college cheaper, which I would love to get into with you. But I cannot support basically throwing more money at the problem when really all the data in front of me shows that the reason college has become too expensive in the first place is because of government involvement in the market and government subsidization and government loans in the first place.
So let's talk about that because you and I may actually have some common ground here. I'm a university professor, but I'm also an advocate who says the cost of higher education is too damn high. I'm also one of those professors who works with technical training programs. And when I say work with them, I work with them intimately because I understand that everybody will not benefit from a college degree, but everybody can benefit from knowing how to do something. That's called technical training. And technical skills are becoming more and more needed and desired in the workplace, certifications, etc. So I'm with you on that point. Here's the blind side I see in your argument. So while yes, the cost of education is something that must be handled and it must be dealt with as an ongoing problem, I don't see how taking away the option of either decreasing or eliminating student loan debt is problematic, okay? So let me put it this way. Usually when we have these kind of debates about massive policy like this, we have 4 pillars for the debate. The first pillar is constitutional. Is it constitutional to do? The second is legal. Is it legally allowable? The third is financial. Is there an economic incentive? And the fourth is ethical. Is there an ethical core for doing something like this? So we already know it is constitutional. We know that it is legal under the Act of 1865, which is your Education Act. We do know that it is economical because the 3 groups that will benefit most from a massive college debt forgiveness plan in the United States of America are women, number 1, number 2, people of color, number 3, older borrowers. Those are the people that will benefit the most. It seems as if your argument is because it does not fix the other problem, which I agree it is a problem, the out of control cost of education. Because it doesn't fix that problem, then you should not also apply this solution for debt forgiveness. Is that basically your argument?
Well, I first want to disagree a bit that it's economical. You're looking at 1.5 trillion in federal loans for about 43 million people that carry them. The average student loan payment per month is $200 to $300 per month. Now, I pay about $250 a month. Is it pleasant? No. Do I sometimes have to pick up extra contracts to cover that, to live comfortably? Yes. And I've worked multiple jobs ever since I graduated college. But that is my responsibility to pay back. And I do earn more than the average person coming out of high school does. So is it economical to ask this country that is already trillions of dollars in debt to come in and pay $1.5 trillion for 43 million people? There's an opportunity cost there. That's money we're not spending on other things that actually might be more economical, that actually might benefit the vast majority of people in this country. So I kind of have a problem with that mentality just because a lot of women carry student loans or just because a lot of people carry student loans.
Well, let me ask you this, because in your first analysis, you said that part of the reason why student loan debt is out of control is because of the fault of the government, correct?
I do think that's true, yes.
Well, why would you not then say the government should bear some of the remedy in making sure that student loan debt forgiveness is a reality? If you can say in your problem dynamic that the federal government is behind the inflated cost of education, which has contributed to the out of control debt that Americans have to carry today, why would you then let them off the hook as it relates to actual application of the remedy to forgive student loan debt?
Well, because who you're actually letting off the hook here are the colleges and universities that have been written a blank check by the government, by student loans. And if we just start canceling them all out, what happens? You're going to have a lot more people that are then they're going to start taking on more debt because it's going to be canceled out. Those colleges continue to get a blank check. All the while, their degrees are becoming less valuable. They're selling people a false bag of goods. They're saying you can come and pay us $90,000 for a graphic design degree and come out and make a lot of money, when in reality, these people come out and make $40,000 a year. We have to hold the colleges accountable, and giving them even more government money, even more of a blank check by canceling student loans and having the taxpayers pick up the bill, that lets these colleges and universities run unchecked. The Federal Reserve actually shows that for every dollar of federal student loan aid, colleges raise their tuition by 65 cents. And so this would be something that not only would not address the root cause of the problem, I think it would compound it and enable colleges to keep raising their rates far above what the laws of supply and demand would actually compel people to pay.
I think you're conflating two things that do not naturally coexist. You're conflating debt forgiveness to financial aid. Financial aid has created massive cost for colleges and universities. As a professor, I know this firsthand. But when you talk about student loan forgiveness, that does not conflate with actual financial aid or even grant programs in the marketplace where the federal government is the underwriter. Let me bring your attention to something that I do disagree with you on as it relates to the financial or the economic argument. There are 3 dynamics that would be impacted based on peer-reviewed studies if you forgive college debt. Number 1, it will immediately increase consumer spending. The payment of college debt is between $200 to $300 per month, as you have already alluded to. That would increase spending by trillions in the marketplace over the course of 1 year. The federal student loan debt program, if discharged overnight, would also have a massive impact on new entrepreneurs, given the fact that based on a 2020 survey, the reason why half of the individuals with student loan debt have not sought entrepreneurship as an option is because of the debt that they have accrued through student loans. And number three, based on a survey in 2019, another scientific survey, nearly half of millennials said they were delaying buying a home because of their student loan debt. That's nearly half. And we all know that one of the greatest ways to build generational wealth is actually through home ownership. So if you are a renter, you typically have about $5,000 in assets. If you are a homeowner, you have about $221,000 in asset on average. You're telling me that half of the millennials who could be homeowners today are not because of student loan debt. Those are three economic variables that take off immediately based on a forgiveness program. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it goes back to the broken window fallacy where you're only looking at one side of the coin of what would happen here. You still have to pay for this debt. It doesn't just magically disappear because the federal government comes in and says it's forgiven. It also doesn't just stop with the people who currently hold student loan debt. So to say that this wouldn't contribute to federal aid, that's not correct. We're going to continue to see people then have their student loans forgiven, have this debt forgiven. That means we, the taxpayers, are picking up the bill and we're continuing to subsidize federal student loans at an even greater amount. And I absolutely do think that would contribute to rising tuition costs continuing to skyrocket. But to talk to the other point that you brought up, I think we have to look at what we're giving up here. Whenever we're spending money, there is an opportunity cost. There's something else we're not getting. And if the answer is to just print more money, we already know what happens then. We get more inflation. Our salaries are not worth as much. We can't buy as many goods. We're already experiencing that in the culture right now. Again, when we ask the average working class person to pick up that tab and forgo things that they need with their tax dollars and services they might be able to access from their tax dollars in order to pay for the choices of people who choose to go to college, who choose to pursue careers that might end up paying them more, that feels very unjust to me. Again, it feels very inequitable. I don't think that it does much as far as fixing the problem that college degrees are not earning as much as they used to. And it certainly doesn't do anything to bring the cost down, which again need to be the real focus. And there are things we could do. You know, when you talk about people not being able to open a business, you talk about people not being able to purchase a home. These are serious things that we should care about, and I do. But there are things we could do without forcing people to subsidize the wealthy and upper class in this country. Things like, why don't we get rid of the interest rate on these loans? That would immediately solve a huge chunk of the problem for many people. You know, I'm paying 6+% every month in interest on these loans. That makes it a lot harder to pay it off quickly and pay it down. We could also be doing things like incentivizing people to start working to repeal many of these barriers to actually getting a good job at the state level. We don't even need the federal government for some of this. There's many things we could do to get barriers out of the way, like occupational licensing and other regulations that prohibit people from simply graduating from college, earning a skill, and going to work. And then thirdly, I think we could start looking at what is driving up the cost of college outside of tuition, and that's living expenses. When you look at the average debt somebody holds in this country, it's about $37,000 in America. What I find interesting is that in Sweden, where their college is free, the average person who attends their college carries $21,000 in loan debt still. Why is that? Because they're still having to pay for their living costs outside of tuition. There are things we could do to start incentivizing people to stay home, live with their parents when they go to college, and do this much more cheaply. Right now, when you go, you're forced to live in a dorm, you're forced to pay their rates, you're forced to pay their meal plans, you're forced to pay for very expensive books. All of these things could drastically bring the cost of college down. And the frustrating thing to me about the student loan debt cancellation is that we focus on this like symptom of the problem. And it doesn't address the root cause of the problem at all. It doesn't make the future better for anybody coming up behind us. And that's my concern. Again, as somebody who would benefit from student loan debt cancellation, why should I say no? I say no to it because I know that it actually doesn't help anybody behind me, and it probably even makes it worse for them.
You know, it's really interesting that you have utilized every other arsenal in the toolbox, right? You're talking about zero interest loans. You're talking about somehow decreasing the cost of living. You're talking about all of these other variables that can be utilized in order to take down the massive debt that people actually owe. However, you have left completely off the table the federal government's involvement in forgiving student loan debt. I don't understand that. I don't understand why all of these other elements are remedies for you, except this one massive element that the federal government has been empowered to do since 1965. So let me pose this question to you. Are you in favor of corporate tax abatements?
I am not in favor of any special breaks for corporations. I think that there should be a flat tax rate. I don't like corporate welfare. And I think selective tax breaks are the same as tax handouts. So I'm not in favor across the board.
Now, the reason why you're not in favor, let me not presume, what's the reason as far as why you're not in favor of those? And I agree with you, I'm not in favor of them either.
It's crony capitalism. It's a perversion of the market, and I think it picks winners and losers, and I think it ultimately hurts people, and I think it's unfair, and it creates all kinds of secondary issues in the market where you then have and that's happening in this field as well. I absolutely,
that's right.
To your point, but it's the colleges that we need to go after here in the universities. They should be on the hook. The reason I have all these other options, notice they involve personal responsibility. They revolve around actually holding the right people accountable. And they revolve around things that government can do to reduce the debt without actually forcing other people to pay for it. Now, why should somebody else have to pay for debt that I took out? Yes, government has tinkered with the market. Yes, government has enabled colleges to make the cost of tuition too expensive. But is that my neighbor's fault that I chose to buy into a kind of a crony scheme? I don't think so.
That's really interesting because once again, you articulated the problem as being partly as a result of the federal government itself. But when it comes to the federal government creating the remedy for the problem, you're now saying that because of who you are as a taxpayer, you should not be involved in paying the taxes or paying the debt associated with the out of control college loans that the federal government was involved in making problematic. Here's that argument on the other side, okay? This country goes to war all the time. I don't agree with those wars. This country makes financial decisions with my money to have positions of prestige and honor for Confederate monuments. That's my tax dollar. I don't want to pay for that crap, but it does, right? So you now want to make the argument that somehow a program that you admit is out of control and problematic for American citizens because of the federal government. You don't want the federal government being involved in the remedy of that program. You want mothers and fathers to have kids stay at home. You want to change how dormitories operate on school campuses, which I'm not saying those are bad things. I'm just saying, why not put that in concert with the reality of the federal government?
The federal government doesn't pay for anything. We do. Every bit of dollars they have come from us. And so what I am saying is that taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook to clean up the government's mess. Yes, the government created the problem, but it can't be the remedy. The same thing that created the problem in the first place cannot be the solution, which is what student debt cancellation is. It's essentially taking more tax dollars, continuing to subsidize these schools, continuing to subsidize poor choices and utilizing these schools, and continuing to ask taxpayers to pick up the bill. That isn't a remedy.
Think about this, okay? The vast majority of Americans were against the war in Afghanistan. They were against invading Iraq. The vast majority of Americans were for things like Meals on Wheels, which the previous administration was against. So there has never needed to be public sentiment for how the American government spends our taxpayer dollars. I don't see you all jumping up and down about those elements. And let's be very clear, about 50% of Americans are for student loan forgiveness programs in America. And more than 50% of Americans are for either some level of abatement, a decrease or bottoming out of the interest or forgiving it altogether. So the vast majority of Americans are for a solution here. So when you talk about Americans actually footing the bill, well, in this case, unlike other things that we pay for through our tax dollars, the vast majority of Americans are on board with this.
That might be so, but that again that's not a principled response to how we should handle things. The vast majority of Americans have been in favor of many terrible things throughout our history.
How is it not a principled response?
The reason that you see these people gravitating towards student loan cancellation, it's the only option they're being presented. I don't hear any other of our leaders coming out and saying, here's X, Y, Z of what we could do to actually address the root cause of the problem. Here's how we could actually make college more affordable. Here's how we could actually cut down on the stress that we're asking people to repay over time. Here's other solutions. That's never brought up. It's either
that's not true.
Cancellation or nothing. And so, of course, when people are presented with only one option, they're going to gravitate towards it.
That's not true. I want you to do some research on something called the American College Promise Act. The American College Promise Act, which was it did not even receive a floor vote. This came under President Barack Obama. It was led by Democrats. Republicans killed it at every chance they had. But the American College Promise Act would have done a few things. Number one, it would have made experiential learning and previous college credits massively transferable across institutions, believing in education over schooling. It would have also decreased the amount that individuals pay for colleges, particularly community colleges, public colleges. And it would have also provided a remedy for individuals who had never been to college before, so that your zip code would not be a determination as far as your ability to go to college or not. And the fourth thing it did is it created a direct pathway for technical training programs for those who would like to be involved in technical skills rather than college education. The American College Promise Act did all of that, but it was shot down by conservatives. So when you say that there has not been a solution on the table, that was one solution right there that never received the light of day.
Now, I don't remember that bill exactly because I would have been in high school when that came about, but I do think I know some of the after effects, which are that some states came in and put in some of these types of programs where they did start to fund trade programs. They did start to actually look at some of this. I think as a whole, the problem is still we're looking at government to fix the problem it created. Even under this, we're saying, what can government pay for? How can government come in and save us? We don't need government to come and save us. We need it to get out of the freaky market and just let it work. Let supply and demand correct itself.
That's a nonsensical argument. If I'm going to continue to pay taxes, damn it, I get a say-so over where my tax dollars are used. You don't get to take 30-40% of my income and tell me I can't tell you what I want you to do with it. That's not how this works.
Listen, I wish you were right. I wish we got to determine where our tax dollars went. I wish we got to vote on that. But the fact of the matter is that we don't. And the fact of the matter is that canceling student loans would do nothing to bring down the cost of college, which again has to be the main focal point here. We have to figure out a way to make this more affordable so that all people have equal opportunity in this country. That's the only actual way to address this in a fair and sensible way.
Let me go to a cause and effect reality that I think maybe you miss in this debate. If you are a black or brown person, if you are a woman, you do not have the same opportunity in the workplace with the same degree as a white male, which means your ability to pay back your college loan debt is severely hindered by a relationship between the marketplace and your gender and or race identity. The American government hasn't fixed that, but that is a problem and a disparity that we know exists. So right now, if you forgive student loan debt, the number one demographic that would benefit from that are women. Number two, people of color, and number three, older Americans. I think it is a good thing to move in that direction. I agree it does not solve the other issue of out of control cost of education, but that is a different argument and debate, and we should utilize every variable, every tool at our disposal to solve this problem. I let you get the last word. We're flat out of time.
Well, listen, at least we agree on 50% of the problem here, and I think we could have many more good debates on it. As a whole, I recognize that there's a lot that needs to be done. I will say as a woman, I don't really agree with you that I face extra burdens in the workplace. I think I've done very well for myself in the workplace, so I don't really see that being a factor, and I don't particularly like as a woman when people use my gender as a reason to push back.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about actual statistical data from women that have went on surveys and said this has become a problem for me, and economic data that shows that women in the workplace make 20 to 25 cents less on average than their white male counterparts. That is a fact. I'm arguing statistical science, not about the microcosm, not about the microcosm of your personal experience.
But that statistic has been refuted over and over again.
No, by who? By who?
There are many studies.
Name one study.
At an average when
you
compare
one study, madam.
And women.
I just cited Pew Research. Name one study.
I don't have the study in front of me, but I'm glad to find them for you. There are
we'll bring you back next
showing
time.
that you are looking at averages versus mediums. And when you look at actual careers, women do not make less when they have the same career path and same amount of education in a given role.
You're completely inaccurate. And you can check out all of my data. Pew Research is one place. Education Institute is another. I appreciate you being on the show on Indisputable. Thank you for being in the bullpen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.